back to WCB Jazz Vinyl. This is one of those videos that I look forward to making every single year, actually lately twice a year, because it is the Record Store Day release schedule. So this was put out maybe round about a week ago. It took me a little bit to get to it, but I'm excited to talk about the jazz or sort of jazz adjacent titles that are a part of Record Store Day coming up on April 12th. So there's actually 23 titles in all. It includes a single, a 10-inch album, 10 single disc albums, 7 double LPs, 2 triple LPs, and a 6 LP box set led by artists ranging from Thelonious Monk to Freddie Hubbard, Sun Ra, and Chet Baker. So a lot of interesting stuff to cover before we dive into that list. As always, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Instagram as well. I'm at what_can_brown. All right, so before we dive in, a couple of quick shameless self-promotion types of things. So first of all, I was reached out to for an interview by allaboutjazz.com, and that was kind of cool. So maybe go check that out. It was posted, I think it was published a couple of days ago. I'll include a link in the description in case that's something that you're interested in reading. I don't know. I was just surprised that they'd be interested in talking to a vinyl collector like myself. And then the other thing is pretty cool. So February 23rd, which is a Sunday, from 2 until 7 p.m., I'm actually going to be on WKCR, which is Columbia University's radio station in Harlem, and I'm going to be spinning vinyl from my collection for 5 hours, all from the Bethlehem Records label. So this is part of their radio program that's called Labeled on WKCR. It's actually led by Suga Steve Mandel and Jay Cohn, who also happen to be the founders of JMI Recordings. And yeah, like I said, I'm gonna be like carting out, I don't know how many dozen records to New York to do this 5-hour radio program. So I've done it before in the past, highlighting Riverside Records. This time it's Bethlehem Records. So very excited for that coming up. All right, without further ado, what we're about to tackle are the 23 titles that are included as part of Record Store Day. 23 jazz titles. It just so happens that that's an unusually large number of titles in this genre. And guess what? The quality, at least the quality of the musicians that are being included here is extremely high. I think I can safely say that this is not having heard the releases yet, right? Like we don't, a lot of this stuff is sort of being released for the first time. So some of these I've heard before, many of these I have not. So not having heard the releases before, what I will say is that this is probably the most exciting Record Store Day jazz release list in years. At least since I've been paying attention to it. So very excited to run down these. What I'm going to do after I cover all 23 of them, and obviously I'll be including pictures maybe over here, so you can see what they look like. At the very end, what I'm going to do is give you my thoughts on maybe those 3 or maybe handful of titles that I think are the ones that I'm going to be looking out for, and maybe some commentary on which I think are going to be the hardest to find. So as usual, I include chapter stops. So if you want to go into the description, you want to skip through to see some of these specific titles, I'll make sure that each of the chapters are titled with the release that it is, in case there's something in particular that you want to hear about. So without further ado. All right, so first up is by Chet Baker, and the title is Almost Blue +2. This is being put out by Slowdown Sounds, and it happens to be a 12-inch single and released in a quantity of 750. So, what is this? Turns out it's sort of a teaser for a upcoming release in May 2025, and that release is a double LP of Chet Baker music, some of which hasn't been heard before, I believe. So essentially, the 3 tracks that are on this single happen to be part of that double LP. So one of those tracks, it features the track, Almost Blue, which was recorded live at the Cannes Film Festival. It also features C'est Si Bon, as well as Make Me Rainbows. So again, 3 songs. The price point on this is $21.99. I kind of, I want to leave some of my commentary to the end, but I would say that I'm a little bit skeptical on this one because, they're acknowledging it's a teaser, but why not just wait those extra couple of weeks and get the full double LP release if this is something that you're interested in? I think a lot of people, though, will probably go to Record Store Day not necessarily having heard in advance that this is being put out, maybe because they don't pay attention to the jazz stuff. And Chet Baker has a lot of big fan base even outside of jazz, and so I could see this one, especially in a quantity of 750. I could see this one disappearing from the shelves, but not necessarily something I'm like super interested in. Next up is by Count Basie and his orchestra, and this is like a best of compilation. It's called Best of the Roulette Years. So this is being put out by Rhino in a quantity of 1,000, and it is being put on moss green vinyl. I suppose this sort of best of hasn't been compiled before. This is a brand new collection of those songs from his Roulette albums. So I looked into it. 4 of the tracks are from that Basie album, the one that has like the mushroom cloud on it. One is from his album with Tony Bennett, which is called Basie Bennett. One is from his album with Sarah Vaughan. Another is from Basie Plays Hefty. The price point on this is $27.99. And here's the thing: is that if you don't want to go tracking down some of those individual albums, and you really just do want to get sort of the best of them, then this is a great option for you. I happen to have a couple of those Basie albums, so am I really sort of trying to go after a sort of a modern compilation? Probably not. Maybe I'll hear after the fact if it was mastered well, that kind of thing. But otherwise, again, for those folks who don't already have Basie in their collection, this could be a great option for you. All right, so this next one is actually pretty exciting. One of the ones that I'm most excited about anyway. So this is Nathan Davis's Happy Girl. This was put out by MPS originally, so this does happen to be a reissue. MPS also put out like the Hip Walk, maybe something else by Nathan Davis too. But in any event, those albums are just classic. It's really good stuff. So MPS is the label. This is being put out in a quantity of 1,800, which maybe I'd be nervous about in terms of getting a copy. I just don't know how many people know about Nathan Davis. I feel like maybe his fan base is more squarely in the jazz space, doesn't have that kind of cross genre name recognition, perhaps. Should be quite available anyway. We'll see what happens in the aftermarket. But who's on this album? We have Woody Shaw, Nathan Davis, obviously, Larry Young, Jimmy Wood, and Billy Brooks. What else to say? 180 gram vinyl, gatefold jacket. This is the first vinyl reissue since a Japanese reissue in the 70s. And this happens to be the first ever release in the United States. The price point on this is actually only $32.99, which I think is pretty reasonable. I don't have information yet about the source material for this. Is this all analog? I'm not quite sure. It's possible some of that information will have been released by the time this video is published, and maybe I'll try to update the description, or somebody can comment about it. But I think this is one to look out for. Again, Nathan Davis's work in the 70s is fantastic, and I'm always after really all of his albums, and I've never owned this before. All right, Kenny Dorham. Blue Bossa in the Bronx, live from the Blue Morocco. Yes, that is the full title. This is being put out by Resonance Records, who always has a presence during Record Store Day. It's a double LP, which I think we'd expect from Resonance. It's being put out in a quantity of 2,500. So what's the material here? Well, this is Dorham's era from, so this is recorded in 1967, so know that. The lineup includes Sonny Red, Cedar Walton, Paul Chambers, and Dennis Charles. As far as the content, as far as where they source the content from, it was transferred from the original tape reels. It's being pressed at Lovinylist, which happens to be the pressing plant that Resonance uses quite frequently these days, and it's being put out on 180 gram vinyl. So the interesting thing about this, I think, if we're wondering what type of music from Dorham to expect, something that's quite telling, I think, is that there's just 2 tracks per side, except for side B, which is 1 track, which makes me think that each of these tracks are probably on the longer side, maybe a little bit more of a blowing session, kind of solo forward stuff, which perhaps we should expect from a live performance of Kenny Dorham. But I just think that that's pretty exciting. There's not a ton of like live Dorham material out there, so I think this is something to look out for sure. So as far as the songs on it, we do have some standards as well as I believe some originals. I think I saw Confirmation, which is just a classic, sort of jazz standard. I think I saw Bag's Groove on the track list as well. think we also have a rendition of Blue Bossa. So the price point on this is $49.99, which, you know, obviously it's a little bit more of the, I'll call it the midpoint actually of record store day price spectrum, you know, kind of thing. But again, it's a double disc, so obviously they're going to have to charge a little bit more. I think this is something to look out for. I'm you know, out there on record store day. Already, I can definitely say that the Nathan Davis and the Kenny Dorham, out of the ones we've talked about so far, are the ones that I'm going to be most interested in grabbing. All right, I say this every year, but you can't have a record store day without a Bill Evans release by Elemental. So this one is Bill Evans' Further Ahead, live in Finland, 1964 to 1969. So, being put out by, of course, Elemental Records, this is a double LP, being put out in a quantity of 4,700. Quite available, I must say. That's a lot of copies for Record Store Day. So let's see. This is going to be a numbered edition, 180 gram. The mastering engineer is Matthew Luthans. Tracks on this. So I checked out the track list. I always like to get a sense of, I don't know, what type of thing to expect. Is it going to be a lot of originals? Is it going to be a lot of standards? Is it tracks that we commonly associate with the artist, right? So I looked at the track list and a few things popped out to me. So that How My Heart Sings is on it, Nardis, Autumn Leaves, Come Rain or Come Shine, Round Midnight. And there are several sort of multiple versions of a couple of the songs, right? Because he would have been working from a sort of repertoire on tour that he probably was, you know, sort of redoing. But obviously with this type of music, we can expect something that's going to sound very different each time, right? So it does include a 12-page booklet. And there's a couple of different formats for Bill Evans. So he wasn't playing with a consistent trio during this time. The earliest session, he's playing with Chuck Israels and Larry Bunker. Then he plays with NHOP, Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen, and Alan Dawson, along with Lee Konitz. So that's kind of an interesting element. And then finally, the last trio that he's with is Eddie Gomez and Marty Morell. So yeah, a couple different formats, interesting tracks. We always get a Bill Evans title, and I know that there's folks who make a habit of trying to grab all, you know, trying to grab them every single time, right? This one's priced at $49.99, so pretty much in line with sort of the sister label Resonance, right? These double LPs happen to be, you know, in that $49.99 space. So here's one I don't really know that much about, or didn't know too much about it coming in. So it's by Astrud Gilberto, and it's called "The Girl from Ipanema," which, you know, was sort of the song that you know, she became very popular or known for singing. So why not have an album to sort of capitalize on that, you know, on that fact, I suppose. So it is titled "The Girl from Ipanema." She probably does a rendition of it. It's being put out on the Prestige Elite label. Not familiar with that label myself. Quantity of 1,000. So this is a reissue. It was originally put out in 1977 on Image Records. And how I'd describe it, because I did a little bit of previewing, I would call it disco-styled renditions of songs that she's known for. A ton of different lineups, heavily produced, 1977 disco in every sort of you know, way to think about it. And being priced at $24.99. So I personally think this is, I don't want to say like bait and switch. I think this is going to be something that people are going to expect it to sound a certain way, and then they're going to hear it, and it's not going to deliver on that expectation. Maybe go preview it yourself and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. But you know, it's not for me. All right, so I'm very excited to see that there's some Charlie Brown, Vince Guaraldi in this list, and in fact, there's two titles. So pretty exciting. This first one, this is selections from "It's the Easter Beagle," Charlie Brown, of course, led by Vince Guaraldi. This is being put out by Lee Mendelson Film Productions in a quantity of 5,000, so there are going to be a lot out there. Let's see what to say. This is that 10-inch, right? So it's actually very interesting. So they're doing Easter egg shaped 10-inch records, and there's 5 different editions, 5 different color editions, and you don't know which one you're going to get. Until you open it up. So if you remember, they did one of these for Great Pumpkin where they had like a pumpkin-shaped record. This time it's egg-shaped, and again, 5 different colors. They are individually numbered, and so essentially there's 1,000 copies of each color variety. As far as the lineup on this, alongside Vince Guaraldi, we have Seward McCain, Robert Clare, Glenn Cronkite, and Elliot Zygmunt. And what else to say? Well, this is selections from It's the Easter Beagle, Charlie Brown. Turns out they are putting out the full release of It's the Easter Beagle, Charlie Brown, before Record Store Day. So kind of interesting. You're going to be able to get the full album on March 21st. And if you want to get this 10-inch selection from it, which is 8 of the 19 total tracks, you can do that on Record Store Day coming up in April. Price point on this is $22.99, so it is a little bit more affordable again because it because it is that the sort of smaller 10-inch format. All right, so I promised two by Vince Guaraldi. This next one is Jazz Impressions of a Boy Named Charlie Brown. Instead of being put out by Lee Mendelson Film Productions, it's being put out by Kraft Recordings, and this does include new as well as alternate takes from tracks from that album. So in some ways, this is a reissue, but what they're kind of calling it is that this is highlights from the newly expanded edition. So I think a selection of the expanded edition is perhaps how we're supposed to translate that. So this is being put out in a quantity of 3,000. They're also going with color vinyl on this. This is sky blue vinyl, mixed and mastered by Paul Blakemore with lacquers cut by Matthew Luthans. And the price point on this is $27.99. All right, so next up we have Freddie Hubbard, On Fire, live from the Blue Morocco. So should sound familiar, right? We just had that Kenny Dorham one that we talked about, also live from the Blue Morocco. This is also being put out by Resonance Records. This one happens to be in a triple LP format in a quantity of 1,500. So more limited and more discs, right? The lineup here includes Benny Maupin, Herbie Lewis, Kenny Barron, and Freddie Waits. This happens to be remastered from the original tapes by Matthew Luthans, pressed at Levinylist, again, as Resonance often does. This also, just like the last one, this is longer format tracks with one track per side, except for the final side, F. So again, more expansive, sort of more, call it solo heavy is the expectation, although I haven't been able to preview any of the content yet. The more discs there are, the more expensive it is, right? So this one is being priced at $74.99. So it seems like they're doing $49.99 these days for the doubles and $74.99 for the triples. But again, for that additional cost, you do get a lot more music. Another from Resonance Records. This is Charles Mingus's In Argentina, the Buenos Aires Concerts. Triple LP on this as well, in a quantity of 3,000, so it's going to be a little bit more available, recorded in 1977. So this particular lineup with Mingus includes Ricky Ford, Jack Walrath, Robert Nellums, and Danny Richmond. Let's see, Matthew Luthans as well, 180 gram vinyl, and again, triple LP, so $74.99. So this next one is also a Charles Mingus title. This is a reissue, though, of Mingus at Monterey, and it is being put out by Candid Records. This is a double LP format and a quantity of 2,000. So this is a reissue of the Jazz Workshop album that was recorded in September 1964. I'm trying to think if they actually released it then or if it was shelved and released in the early 70s. But in any event, like I said a couple times, it's a reissue. And I will say that original record has actually gone up in value quite a bit, and it can be difficult to find in sort of clean condition. So the lineup here includes Charles McPherson, Danny Richmond, Jackie Byard, John Hardy, Buddy Collette, Lou Blackburn, Red Callender, and some others. So this is it's going to be a little bit different, right? The other was a little bit more slimmed down sort of combo or orchestra, whereas this is a little bit larger. So this is being remastered by Michael Graves with lacquers cut by Jeff Powell and pressed on 180 gram. Despite the fact that it's despite the fact that it's a double LP, this one is actually being priced just at $37.99. So anyway, interesting that there's so much Mingus content that's coming out this year. All right, moving along, we've got Thelonious Monk live at the It Club. This is being put out by Legacy Recordings in a quantity of 3,500. This one was first issued in 1982, just after Thelonious Monk died. So the material, though, was recorded in 1964, features Charlie Rouse, Ben Riley, and Larry Gales. But I guess they just shelved it again, and they finally released it in 1982. This did not have an inspired cover when it was first put out in 1982. In fact, I kind of hate it. And unfortunately, it seems like they're going with it again. So that's a little bit, that's a little bit unfortunate. So the interesting thing here too, because I looked into this a little bit. So the criticism with the original release of this in 1982 is that they trimmed all of the tracks. So what happened was Mosaic then decided to later release the full version of all the songs in a 4 LP edition. And theoretically, that should be better because again, they didn't chop up each of the songs. So this one happens to be a double LP and not a 4 LP release. So the fact that it's double LP, and I did check the track lengths from the original compared to this one. This does indeed seem to just be a reissue of that original trimmed album. So I don't know. I'm gonna look into that a little bit more and maybe try to preview and find out how obvious the trims are. Do they just fade out, or like what did they do? Did they take out solos? I'm not exactly sure. So something to look into. But I will say that this is a more affordable release. It's being put out at just $28.99. You know what? It occurred to me that these prices that I'm referencing aren't necessarily the prices you're going to see at your record store. I think there's some leeway for record stores to price differently, just because I've seen that happen for record store day releases. So we'll find out. But anyway, these are kind of like the posted online prices. So don't go and argue with your record store because it doesn't match up with what I'm telling you. All right, so this next one is Wes Montgomery and Wynton Kelly, and it is Smokin in Seattle, live at the Penthouse. This is being put out by Resonance in a quantity of just 1,500. If this sounds familiar, it is because it is indeed a second pressing of the 2017 RSD title. So we've seen it before, but surely the idea is that there is pent-up demand. And if you check the prices of that original 2017 album, you'll realize that there is pent-up demand. So this is being pressed on 180-gram vinyl by Lovinylist. It is mastered by Matthew Luthans. They are using a different cover, which I don't think is a bad idea. I think maybe it's a good idea to sort of change things up and give people something different. You also have a way to distinguish whether yours is a first pressing or a second pressing. So check out that cover. And the price point on this is not too bad. It seems to. I'm gonna have to double check this because I saw it listed on a website. I'm not convinced that this is actually $25.99. I feel like typically even our single disc Resonance record release would be a little bit more expensive, but the price point I saw was $25.99. All right, so we always love these types of titles. Reissue by Kraft Recordings of a classic album. They seem to be doing this for a number of record store days recently. This one is Mulligan meets Monk. So Jerry Mulligan, Thelonious Monk. This is a classic album originally put out on Riverside Records. They are going with the original cover version. There was like a reissue where they added a photo on it, but the original does not have that photo. It's more of a stark cover, and I think it's great. Let's see, quantity of 3,000. This is the mono mix, which makes me think that they'll be doing a stereo later in the year, because I feel like that's typically what happens. Like they release the Chet Baker mono, and then later they release the stereo. What else? Lacquer's cut from the original master tapes by Kevin Gray. You've got a tip-on jacket for this, and the price point sounds familiar, as have the others in sort of, the OJC series at $38.99. All right, this is one of the more modern recordings compared to almost, well, really anything else on this list. This is by David Fathead Newman, and it includes Ellis Marsalis and Cornell Dupree. The title is Return to the Wide Open Spaces, and it's being put out by Steady Boy Records, not a label I was familiar with, but in any event, that's who's putting it out. It's a double LP format in a quantity of just 950. So this happens to be a reissue of a 1990 album with brand new, and I would say improved artwork compared to that original. The total lineup. So in addition to those three leaders, right, that I mentioned, so you've got, well, let me just list all the musicians. So it's Chuck Rainey, you got David Fathead Newman, Cornell Dupree, Ellis Marsalis, Leroy Cooper, Dennis Dotson, James Clay, and George Rains. So this is, despite the fact that it's a reissue, this is actually the first time it's being put out on vinyl. So otherwise, in 1990, it was just put out on CD, I suppose. I previewed it. It's a little smooth for me, so if that's if that triggers anybody, maybe go and preview it yourself and determine if it's something you want to pick up. But in any event, the price point on it is $44.99. All right, so this is also one of those that I'm the most excited about, along with some of those others, Nathan Davis, etc. Right? So this is Pharoah Sanders' Izipho Zam, I believe is how you pronounce that. So this is being put out by Mac Avenue in a quantity of just 1,500. So, Mac Avenue is sort of relaunching a Strata East series, reissue series, and so this is kind of representing that launch, I suppose. Um, they've really been. This is like a very interesting kind of dusting off. I think of the series. They're going for sort of that audiophile kind of vibe for the releases. So this is pressed at RTI. It's mastered by Kevin Gray. It's being put out in 180 gram. I do believe that each of these are gatefolds. Um, I do have this album. I have an original. My original is not in great shape, but you know it's just well loved. So this is definitely something that I'm interested in looking more into. And just as an aside, I have been meaning to make a whole video just on the Mac Avenue Strata East sort of reissue series. So we'll get into more detail when I finally get around to doing that. But this album was originally recorded in 1969. It features Billy Hart, Sonny Fortune, Clifford Jordan, Howard Johnson, Leon Thomas, Lonnie Liston Smith, Sonny Sharrock, Cecil McBee. Killer lineup, killer music as well. Really fantastic album. There's just 3 tracks on it though. One is at just under 9 minutes. There's a 12-minute and there's a 29-minute. So it's kind of expansive. It's maybe not unlike what we would expect from Pharoah Sanders, but maybe just a little bit more out there than perhaps some of his stuff for Impulse. The thing is that a decent original copy of this is going to set you back a couple $100. So the fact that they're releasing a quality, call it audiophile edition, I think is just really encouraging. It's going to be mastered from the original tapes, according to the Mac Avenue recent Zoom call where they talked through a lot of the detail about these releases. I think there was some early controversy that it was going to be digital, but that's not the case. It's being pressed from the original master tapes. And the price point on this one is $39.99. So expect me to be trying to grab one of those limited sort of 1,500 copies. Next up is by Gil Scott-Heron, and the album is Moving Target. So this is being put out by the LMLR label in a quantity of 3,000. So this is actually just a reissue. It was first put out in 1982 by Arista. As far as the vibe on this, because there's different sort of different vibes across Gil Scott-Heron's albums. This is more of like a disco funk vibe, is what I would call it. But obviously, you're going to kind of have Gil Scott-Heron's sort of mixed spoken word, kind of thing here. What else to say? I mean, the last vinyl reissue of this was in 2014. It's not exactly something that's been difficult to get, whether in that reissue form. It's even pretty available in its original form too, and you don't have to really spend that much money. But I mean, here's the thing: to have a modern reissue, we'll see how it sounds. But I think it's going to appeal to a decent amount of people. It's being put out on red vinyl, incidentally, and they are including an Obi strip on this. So just kind of I don't know. I feel like lately we've been seeing more Obi strips as opposed to hype stickers, sometimes both. And I'm not the biggest fan of Obi strips, but I guess it's fine as long as it's easy to get off, I suppose. So the price point on this one is $29.99. All right, this next one up is also, I believe, put out by LMLR, and it is Archie Shepp and the Full Moon Ensemble, the complete live the complete live at Antibes. So this is a double LP, quantity of 3,000, being put out on orange and brown vinyl. And yeah, I mean it's a reissue. This was originally put out on the Actuel label, and as far as how they're doing this, well, it is mastered from the original tapes, so that's pretty exciting. I thought it was just kind of interesting because you don't really see too many reissues of the Actuel label titles. And when you do, I feel like the quality has kind of been a little bit all over the place. So the fact that they're mastering this from the original tapes, I think, is encouraging. It's at a $38.99 price point, which I think is pretty fair for a double LP. So it'll be, I don't know, maybe I'll pick this up. I may have to go and preview that album since, again, it's a reissue, so the content's out there, just to find out if it's something that interests me, because I do like Archie Shepp, but I'd say selectively anyway. All right, so we've got 2 albums by Sun Ra. This first one is called Stray Voltage. It's being put out by Modern Harmonic. It is a double LP in a quantity of just 1,000 copies, so pretty limited. What else to say? So frosted orange vinyl for this one. I believe that none of these tracks have been issued before, so it's new Sun Ra content, which I think is going to excite some folks. Just one word of warning. Not like you kind of always need to have a word of warning when you're talking about Sun Ra. This album is pretty out there, sort of electronic, like science fiction, computer generated kind of like vibe. This isn't his normal orchestra type of stuff. I would encourage, if you just love All Sun Ra and anything he's ever done, then you're probably going to like this. But if you're, I don't know, maybe like me and a little bit more selective, then go and preview it because it's too out there for me. Like I can't. This isn't something that I would necessarily enjoy, but it's just really out there electronic stuff, like I said. But anyway, the price point on this is $37.99. Now the other Sun Ra title is called Nuit de la Fondation, and then there's a word that I really don't know how to pronounce, Maeght. So I'm just going to leave it there, and you can make fun of my inability to speak French, right? So I know Nuit is night. I know that much. So what is this? This is being put out by Strut. And Strut is kind of, they've developed a reputation for putting out really interesting stuff. They reissued titles by, like the Pyramids, right? And just a lot of stuff that really deserves to be heard. So I really like what they're doing, what they're trying to do. This is a 6 LP box set though, and it's a quantity of 800. So there's limited details out there, although we do have the cover image. But there's limited details. What we do know is that they're calling it, they said that it comes in a hardboard box with a reprint of the original festival program, a 12-page oversized booklet, and restored photos. And again, it's 6 LPs. So along with 6 LPs, you do have a little bit higher price point of $149.99. All right, 3 more to get through. So this next one is by Blue Note. Blue Note does not typically participate in Record Store Day, but they are this year, although it's kind of with an interesting title. So this is Alts and Outs, the other side of Blue Note, and it's being put out in a quantity of 2,500. So what this is a compilation of alternate takes and outtakes by folks like Grant Green, Art Blakey, Jimmy Smith, Sonny Clark, Cannonball Adderley. It's being put out on blue vinyl. So, what is this? Well, it's literally outtakes from sessions that, to be fair, produce like super iconic albums. So there's stuff from Moan in here, from Cool Struttin', Something Else, Idle Moments, but it's stuff that didn't make the original album. Whether it's the same song because, I think typically it's the same songs that they were rehearsing. It's just we get these outtakes or these alternate takes. So on this album, there are just 6 tracks. So it's not like it's this huge compilation kind of thing. It's just 6 tracks, but it could be interesting to check out. I don't know. We'll see if I get in the mood when I'm actually in the store, if it's something that I seek out after based on hearing people's feedback. In any event, it's at a price point of $32.99. So, end of the list is always these compilations, right? So the next 2 are as well. So this second to last one, Giles Peterson presents International Anthem. So that Chicago label that's putting out all this great music right now, right? Like one of those new labels to watch for in terms of the new artists that they're highlighting. So this is a double LP. Again, it's being put out by International Anthem. And essentially, the sense that I get is that Giles Peterson himself basically compiled a number of tracks that he wanted to appear on this double LP release. And that's what it is. It's being put out on frozen Lake Michigan colored vinyl, which I think is funny. And International Anthem, it has a reputation for putting stuff out on colored vinyl, but we'll say that they do it probably better than most in terms of it just always sounds really good. They're not going with 180 gram vinyl, but they never do. International Anthem, or at least rarely does. It's 140 gram vinyl, and the price point on this one is $37.99. All right, one more for you, and this is something that we expect every year. This is by Jazz Dispensary, so they basically put out compilation volumes for every Record Store Day. This one is titled Night Lights. Being put out by Craft Recordings, which is obviously the sort of parent label over Jazz Dispensary. It's in a quantity of 4,000. These are indeed typically pretty available, but also they usually do such a good job in terms of the tracks that they decide to compile. Always color vinyl with these. This is Midnight Blue vinyl, and in terms of the artists that they highlight, you get Willis Jackson, Arnett Cobb, Kenny Burrell, Clark Terry, Yusef Lateef, Red Garland, and Lem Winchester. And the price point on this, these are always more affordable. Even though they do such a good job with the choice of the tracks and how they put it out and the sound and everything, these always sound great, but they're also always affordable. This one is just $29.99. All right, so a little bit of a recap and what am I most interested in getting? So first, I suppose the recap, 23 titles. like I said, this is a more exciting list. Not necessarily because there's so many reissues of classic albums, but because there's a lot of new content, right? So new content from great artists, Charles Mingus, Freddie, Hubbard, Kenny Dorham, etc. Right? So I think that's what I'm particularly excited about with this release list, and it is quite large. And maybe because there's so many titles, maybe it'll mean that some of those titles that are pressed in a lower quantity are just a little bit easier to get because people are sort of spread across so many options, so many great options. Or maybe just we're all going to end up buying more titles than we normally do, right? We'll see what happens. So as I flip through the list, and I gave you some of the commentary as I was talking through it, but I'm just going to reiterate, especially for those folks who maybe skipped ahead. Titles that I'm most interested in getting include Nathan Davis's Happy Girl, quantity of 1,800, so we'll see if I'm able to get one. Kenny Dorham, Blue Bossa in the Bronx, that's that Resonance title, double LP, quantity of 2,500, so that could be a little bit easier. Otherwise, I am interested in the Vince Guaraldi stuff, so I'm gonna have to see whether I feel like I need the alternate takes, whether I want the 10-inch sort of Easter egg, Easter Beagle Charlie Brown album, but in the shape of an Easter egg, or whether I'd rather wait for the full release, which actually wait for the full release. It comes out in March. But in any event, Freddie Hubbard on Fire, I think, is going to be another interesting one. Price point's a little high on that one, and it's a little bit more limited as well, quantity of just 1,500. But that's something that I'm pretty interested in. Otherwise, I already have the Wes Montgomery, Wynton, Kelly, Smokin in Seattle. Otherwise, that'd probably be one I'd want to get. Mulligan meets Monk could be something that I look for as well. But Pharoah Sanders' Izipho Zam is very high on the list. Probably overall that and Nathan Davis. But again, some of these Resonance multi-disc releases are pretty interesting to me as well. So I'm probably looking through this. I may be leaving it at that. I think it's Hubbard. I think it's Dorham. It's Nathan Davis, and it's Pharoah Sanders, possibly some Guaraldi. Those are the ones that I'm most interested in. And as far as availability, like I said, like I just kind of said like a minute ago, because there's more titles, it could go either way. Either people are walking out of there with a larger stack, or they're having to be a little bit more careful with where they spend their money. And so that could mean that some of these titles that are pressed in lower quantities just end up being a little bit more available. Which is always good, right? Because no one likes to see the title that they really wanted to get show up on eBay, later in the day for, significantly more money. Now, one thing I will say, and I've said it before and I'm going to say it again, is that I don't care what title it is. If it's being flipped on eBay same day or even the next day, it's going to be expensive. But if all you can do is wait a month, just wait a month, for that title that like you really wanted, you couldn't get, and you feel like, like all these flippers are making money, wait a month. You're going to be able to get it, and you're going to be able to get it for the original retail price. I never pay flipper money, and I don't always go to Record Store Day, but I always end up getting the titles that I want. So I just think patience can sometimes work out. Or work in your favor. And so I'd just encourage you to channel that, maybe that negative energy of feeling like this is just a money grab by big labels and the record stores don't make that much money on Record Store Day or whatever it is that you have in your head. Channel that energy a little bit and just be patient, and you'll be able to get what you want. At least that's been the case. That's been my experience anyway. So thanks everyone for sticking with me through this overview. I hope it's helpful. Hope it's a useful guide for you as we get a little bit closer to Record Store Day. Let me know what you think in the comments about the titles you're most interested in. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you next time.